comments. You don't keep them later than you have to, and hopefully you can let them out early. My name is Jeff Allen, and I'll be your facilitator tonight. I'm from Powell River, and I'm going to be looking after the process this evening and making sure that everything happens on time and we get through it. I'm joined by a team over here who is going to be doing a lot of the work this evening, and I just want them to introduce themselves if we can.
I'm Gerald Longston. I'm with MHPM Project Managers out of Vancouver. We've been hired by the library to facilitate this whole process of putting together a new library and to eventually, hopefully, get the financing and political support that we need. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Good evening. I'm Brian Wakeland from Public Architecture and Communication. I'm based in Vancouver. I'm working with the team here, and I'm helping facilitate in particular the local provincial requirements of the project and also lend my experience and expertise on library.
Hello, my name is Craig Curtis, and I'm an architect with the Miller Hall Partnership. Working collaboratively here with the team and looking forward to showing you what we've come up with today.
I'm Ruth Whittaker. I'm also with Miller Hall and working with the team, and I'm on the team to kind of help with all things library that allow it to work and function as well as you need it to.
Okay, thank you very much. And indeed, thank you for coming out this evening on Valentine's Day. I wore my red shirt for you. Hopefully that works. Brings us some good karma this evening. When we come together as a community, talk about issues, it's never simple. There are passions on both sides of any issue. Whether they're perceived to be negative or positive, it doesn't matter, because most people come out because they're concerned about the community at one level or another. The importance in these meetings is to prepare an agenda and a process that allows those voices to be heard. And it behooves all of us here, in order for us to listen and to hear what each other is saying, we need to use a bit of respect. So I'm saying that at the outset because the passions run deep. And I know that from living in this community, that we care very deeply about all of these things. Whether it's a library, whether it's a waste plant, whatever it may be, these things are important to us. But when we come together, it's important that we can hear each other and that we can learn what each other has to say. Because there's always the chance that somebody has a piece of information that we never had before. So I'm asking you this evening to keep that in mind as we go through the evening. Now there is a process in place. As you know, the people involved at the front of the room, including myself, the site was already chosen. That's a given for this group of people. There's nothing that this group of people had to do with that. However, we felt it important, in light of what we've been seeing in the community, to provide a venue that emerged from the work that was done in the last workshop. They will walk you through that. That will be about a half-hour presentation. We will then ask for questions from the crowd in terms of clarification. Is there anything you need to know about anything they have said before we proceed? We will then take a break in which the room will be shifted, and we will begin to focus in the back area of the hall, where there will be a workshop format laid out, which I will address at that time. And you'll get a chance to work with architects, to make your comments, to write your own ideas on the wall if you need to, whatever it is that you need to do. There will also be an opportunity to meet outside with all of the information there about how decisions were made, to meet with members of council and the library to talk about those particular concerns as well. Okay? So that's where we're going to go. So we're going to start at this point. I'll turn the mic over to Jerry, and he'll give you a brief overview of how we got to this point in the project.
Thanks, Jeff. So I think I'll start back only a little ways, which would be in November, and I see a number of faces in the audience. We're here for the design charrette. And that design charrette, we explored with you, and with the help of the architects, the types of features, verbally, that you would like to see in a new library. So we explored those and we recorded all that information. We broke into groups and that, and all that information was given to the architects. And they took that away. They took that away to actually start designing. So what we're here to do today then is to refine those designs, to have your input. So they're going to show you 3 possible concepts that they've come up with for the library with a number of variety of various features, whether it's the height of the building or the orientation of it, but we're not here to pick color today. We're not here to pick the door handles. We're here to look at how this library could possibly sit on this particular site. And we're really looking for your input. So once you see their ideas, we're going to break up, like Jeff mentioned, into groups, and we're going to get your input into some of the design ideas that you think might be missed, some that could be made better and exemplified. Following that, in a couple of weeks, we expect the architects to come back with what we would say would be a preliminary design. One design meeting, hopefully, most people's criteria for a new library on that site. That's pretty well the end of their work at that time. It then behooves the community to move on with the more important part of this development of the library, which is the political support, the financial support, and the community support that needs to happen to move this library ahead. And that's what we're here today really to do, to look for your support for a new library on this particular site. It may not be designed exactly like Miller Hall is showing you today, but this is the start of that process. So we're really looking forward to working with you over the next couple of hours and to move through the process. So thanks for your help and your support.
Oh, you're going to love technology when it works. We've lost, no, you're good. We're there? We're there? Okay. It's working now. Good. So now we're going to hand it over to Ruth, who is going to walk you through, and I think it's a team presentation here, to walk you through the thinking behind what you're seeing on the panels, and to give you a bit more insight as to what was going through their particular minds as they put these designs on paper. Okay, Ruth?
Hi. Can everyone hear me? I see a green light. Okay. Good evening. Thanks for coming out on a Tuesday night to help guide us on this library journey. And before we start talking about specific design ideas or specific configurations on this site, I thought it would be good to back up a second and just talk about libraries in general.
Take that one out too, Jeff.
This one out.
All of it out. Thanks.
So, everyone's been to the library here in town, I would imagine, and we all remember different libraries that we've passed through in our experiences. But you know, over the last 150 years, libraries have seen a lot of change, and that's normal. They have been changing since they started, embracing new forms of information and media and technology. That's, you know, par for the course at every place. That's open to everyone. So a library, at least the way that our team has been looking at it with the library here in town, is that it needs to do so much besides just storing books. Okay, that's all we have for tonight. So just so you know, those are the kinds of things that have been in the back of our head as we've been assembling ideas for you to look at tonight. And as we start thinking about how a library goes together, and how big it is, and how it needs to sit on the site, and all these sorts of things, you know, there are kind of rules of the road that we look to guide us. And one of those is, you know, relevant trends. What's happening locally that we need to pay attention to? What's happening nationally and provincially with regard to technology or information or what's coming that isn't here today but will be here in 5 years or 20 years. Demographic patterns, what's happening here in Powell River? Are there a lot of young children? Are there a lot of people moving in later in life? Every community is different, and we've done a lot of research about what is appropriate for Powell River's population. Other people have been building libraries nearby on Vancouver Island, in Vancouver, BC, other places in the province, as well as in Washington and Oregon. So what are they doing? What's working and what's not working? And paying attention to the people who have come before us. And then how much, what does the collection look like? How big is it? How big is the digital collection? And what does that mean for the people space that's left in between the books? And all of these things really contribute to start to define system-wide goals for your library. And all of these things work together to define how big it might be and where it wants to be and all the things that need to fit inside. So, like Jerry said, we're not here to pick out door handles tonight, but there are some really important guiding principles that we will use as we move forward and start to shape these concepts. And just to kind of share with you the things that we've been thinking about, these are a series of guiding principles or road rules that we have come to use on all of our library projects, and thought we could walk through them just briefly. Libraries need to be functional. That staff needs to do a lot of work to get books out on the floor, and then it also needs to work really well for you when you're there for activities, whether it be technology or conversation or collection. A library should be community-oriented. All of you have something different that you come to the library for. Every one of you, something different. So we need it to serve all of those needs. The library should be easy to use. That comes, from the staff that's there to help you navigate everything, but it also should be easy for you to figure out things on your own. We talked about change, and that is normal. We don't have a crystal ball. I wish we did. But we can anticipate that change will continue to happen after we are gone. So this is a 50 or 100-year building. So how can we make it flexible to accommodate all the things that we can't imagine today? Because this is a public building that is an investment by the community, it should be built in a way that's durable and timeless and easy to operate and maintain. It should be efficiently organized so that you're making the best use of every square inch. It should be easy to monitor so that everyone feels safe and secure when they're using the building. And lastly, it should accommodate ample spaces for people. You're coming there to access things, but you also want spaces to enjoy it with others. So what's really interesting about this list is this is a list that I've found that a library design consultant gave at a national conference, and as guidelines for the profession. And I don't know if any of you have a guess at what year he gave this list. I don't know if anyone wants to hanker a guess. 1965. Anyone else? 1891. And I think that's really magical because libraries have seen so much change, yet the things that they set out 120 years ago are so true today. The library looks and feels different, it's doing so many more things, but at the end of the day, the core of their mission is still the same. The tools we use to accomplish it are the same. So just to keep in mind some of the things that we will be working on as we go forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian to recap where we were in December.
Hello. Thanks for having me back. I'm very happy to be here for Valentine's Day. And so just to recap a few of the things we heard on our December charrette that were important for the design team to carry forward and really did keep in the back of our mind as we were developing some of the things we're going to be showing you tonight were a number of common themes in particular. The environment, the site, the sense of place was critical to any building that we were going to put here. It was put forward very succinctly that an out-of-the-box solution would just not be accepted in this place. It's a very special place It has a very deep and sincere sense of itself that we have tried very hard to convey through a built form. Secondly, it has to be a place for much more than just books. Standing ovation here. A place for the community to gather, a place for a variety of disciplines and programs to take place. This library should also incorporate aspects for good functionality. It has to work well, as Ruth has just said. It has to be efficient. It has to fulfill its needs. And there are a variety of them. And so our first starting point was an analysis of the site. It has some really remarkable and unique characteristics. It's one of these places, I've grown up on the coast here and I've been all up and down the islands here, and it's one of the most remarkable places, I think, for its ability to connect the region, and by that I mean the views to Comox, to Texada, to Harwood, but also the local. It has connection to the beach, the park, and the city. It's a wonderful crossroads in a place that we don't see very often. Agree with me? Also, it has remarkable light aspects, very critical when you're designing a library is the consideration of natural daylight. And this site has a really remarkable phenomenon because of its uninterrupted western exposure, which is quite wonderful, but it's also a challenge. We have those great views out to the islands, and we also have a lot of setting sun coming in right at it. That can be difficult when you're trying to keep a building comfortable and not overheated in the summer. I mean, we noticed today, even driving in the car, that we were getting heat gain through the window. And also, particularly if we choose to locate a building at the south end of the site, it will become an anchor for the retail street itself and a vital end point to that. One thing I also appreciate about this location as a sailor, you have very pronounced prevailing winds. In the summer we get a nice due west, and in the winter it comes out south-southeast. So certainly we were thinking about ways of creating microclimates and harnessing those winds and keeping out of them when we need to. Also, the grade change across this site is significant. 26 feet from the intersection down to the level of the site itself, 8 meters. That means a multi-floor building could work well in it. It means a number of things. It's a tricky site to access by a vehicle, and it has complexities, but also a potential for a really unique sense of place and a sense of a particular building for a particular site. Finally, very important points. There are a number of regulations that constrict the amount of site that is available. Department of Fisheries and Oceans requires a 100-foot, 30-meter setback from the high water mark that effectively limits or cuts the site in half of what we can actually build on. There are 25-foot setbacks from the road itself, so we're left with about half the site that we can actually occupy with a building. By the time we put a building there, with the associated parking, depending on what kind of option we select or move forward in, it's about 10 to 20% of the site would be required for a building of this size. Okay, so just to keep that in mind, it's an important fact for this site. So now I'm going to turn the mic and the baton over to Craig. He's going to tell you about some relevant precedents for you.
Thanks, Brian. Everybody hear me okay back there? Okay. As Brian mentioned, we only need 10 to 20% of this site for the library and its associated parking. And we know how important this piece of property is to Powell River. A lot of you are here because you care a lot about this particular piece of property. And we wanted to show you a couple of case studies, projects that we have done, where we've had similar issues in similar sized communities and have come up with creative solutions so that it's a win-win situation. The first project I want to show you is down in Oregon, a town called Wilsonville, where they were the city proposed to build a drinking water plant on a piece of property that was right in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood. And as you can imagine, that was quite controversial. This is a very large industrial plant put right in the community. You can see how close it is. This is an aerial view. This is the edge of the neighborhood. These are all houses, and this is just the tip of a very large residential area. And here's this drinking water plant that's going in. And so we were brought onto this project kind of partway through. There was already a lot of controversy, but we came on to the project with the landscape architect. We were challenged by the city to say, can you come up with a way that can make this fit into our community a little bit better, turn it into an asset instead of a detriment. So we went to work with a very talented landscape architect and came up with a scheme where we kind of treated the face of the building almost like a Western storefront. So we had about a 300-meter long wall that we put that shielded the drinking water plant, and everything from that face of wall out to the neighborhood we treated as a park. So we wanted to just take the rest of this land and really give it back to the community with a trail system and a very large water feature, which seemed appropriate given the nature of this building. So this is an early sketch of what we had in mind. This is the same aerial photograph after the park has been approved. You can see it's now green space, and some images of what we're able to accomplish. Beautiful landscape. In this case, again, there was an emphasis on water because it was a drinking water plant and it was readily available, so we could use that as a feature. This is that 300-meter long wall. It's kind of a backdrop. So it was almost like a folly. It was just a way to provide a kind of a visually interesting composition as a background to this public park. It's very well used and well liked by the community. And in fact, the other thing that we were able to work out with the developer is the idea of putting in a meeting room, a public meeting room that would be part of the building. So in the distance here, you can see one room that sticks out, protrudes from the 300-meter long wall, and that is this public meeting room that was then given back to the community to use. So in the end, the community is very pleased that they got a park out of the deal and they still got the drinking water plant. Another project is for the city of Bainbridge Island, a community of about 20,000 people, and they recently incorporated when we were awarded this project, and the first order of business for this community was to build a new city hall. And the property that was chosen for the city hall was, like this one, somewhat controversial because it was the site for the weekend farmers market, and it also provided parking for the performing arts building that was next door. And so people who were very much passionate about those organizations were upset that this might displace those functions from the site. This is the city hall, and it comes right up to the street. We were able to come up with a design so everyone could kind of cohabitate together. So the solution was that we would provide a park in the middle of the site that from 8 to 5, this is a city park. It's a place for people to go and have lunch. There's a structured lawn, which means it's grass, but it's planted over what's called grass-creed or grass pave. It's a system that can handle vehicle traffic and a lot of abuse. But it's still a park, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. On the weekends, it becomes a farmer's market. So the farmer's market vehicles can pull right up onto that grass, and in fact, it greatly enhanced this farmer's market and turned it into one of the best farmer's markets in the entire region. Not only do they have their space, but it's really nice space. It's Class A farmer's market space. They have water available. There's a restroom that's accessible from the outside on weekends at the city hall that was given to the farmers market instead of the usual Santa cans. Now they have real clean restrooms for the patrons who come to the farmers market. And then on those evening events, when the performing arts needs it, it can be parked on. Again, it's structured grass. So this was a way of solving a problem for 3 distinct uses, through a project, everybody ended up gaining in the end when this was done. And we're not here to propose any complete solution for this particular property today, but we want everyone in the room to start thinking creatively about how this site may be able to accommodate more than just a library in the end. This is what the site looks like now. An aerial view, you can see that this is the park, 8 to 5. This is what it looks like during the day, and here's what it looks like during the farmer's market. Very active. One more thing I wanted to mention. We know that there's a very strong artist community here in Powell River, and I know that came out loud and clear at the last workshop. Again, using the Bainbridge Island City Hall as an example, we were able to work with a number of local artists as we worked through the design process of that project. So there are ways to incorporate the artist's desires with this project, whether that is just a gallery space that becomes part of the project, or a future gallery that might fit on the property, or another way to look at it might be to look at incorporating art within the library itself. In this case, there was a 1% for Art project that was created, and we worked with 7 artists, 5 of them from Bainbridge Island, to create art pieces that were actually installed as part of the building. And those ranged from countertops by a boat builder, to sliding doors by a metal worker, and historic tiles that were set into the countertops, swinging gates and handrails by local artists. These are all elements of the building that make the building so much richer, and also kind of shows the talent of the local community that the building serves. So again, these are just ideas to throw out there to get the creative juices flowing, because when we hear from all of you later, we'd like to hear your thoughts that you have about how this project can better represent the people of Powell River.
Okay, so I think a few of you who were here early started to look at some of these boards here in the front before you sat down, and we'll definitely have more time after the break to spend talking about these. But I'm going to take you through just briefly the material that was on those boards so that we all have a common foundation of what we're seeing. And the first thing I want to say is that none of these ideas are perfect. They all have different attributes, good and bad. Like Jeff was saying, they're all concepts. They're just a start, and they're basically a vehicle to give us something to talk about tonight and to glean ideas from all of you. And we very much need your help tonight in terms of steering us in the right direction so that we have the right homework to go home with that accurately represents the things that you feel fit here in Powell River. So this is where you start putting on your thinking caps. So first of all, there were 3 basic ideas and common themes that came out of that early workshop that we carried forward and are true in each of the 3 schemes. There are differences, but there are 3 things that we tried to maintain in all of them. And that's a respect for the site. This site has had a rich community history in your town, and we need to honor that and continue it. The library should be welcoming. All ages, residents and newcomers, everyone should feel welcome here. And how does the building say that out loud to you as you see it? And lastly, it needs to work like a library. So all 3 of those we tried to accommodate. So concept A places the library basically in the center of the site, and the main essence of this scheme is a connection to the trail system. This is such an important piece of your community. It brings people from the ferry all the way down and up through the park, and what a wonderful asset. Most communities would be jealous to have something like that. So what if this building really addresses the trail system? You enter the library from an improved section of the trail system. Maybe there's an overhang that crosses over it. So this black arrow you're seeing right here might represent a place where you could enter the library off of this trail. In this scheme, we would make use of the entry and the parking area that's already at the north, so using what we already have there. And what that does is it preserves this section down at the south for conservation or future use, or the parking that's already there, whatever needs you deem fit. So this scheme, the things you'll be able to see when you walk up to the boards later are locations for the bus stop, the handy dart, and this entry kind of plaza area between the parking and the building. This scheme, we started to think about how a regular structural system that you could see might add an element of interest to the outside and the inside of the space and allow us to create a big, open, flexible space. So a library that could change and do things that it needs to accommodate over its lifetime, but giving you a big, open, flexible space that could try to do it all on one single story. And here you can see examples. These are, obviously we haven't designed your library yet, so these aren't pictures of your exact building, but these are pictures of projects that we've done for other communities that have some of the same ideas or some of the same visual look and feel. So here you can see, here's what it might be like to see regular structure with a nice wood ceiling illuminated in the evening. It gets dark at 4 o'clock part of the year, so how could we make this library really welcoming in the evening? And what would it be like if there was a nice big overhang over part of the trail system that allowed you to walk out of the sun or out of the rain? And here's a view of that meeting room that was a really special piece of that water treatment plant that Craig talked about. How could a meeting room and that gathering space be a special piece of this design? So again, this is just a very rough, kind of rudimentary look at what it would look like if there was a one-story, big open space where you can see the structure and the wood and have it really kind of nestle up against that trail structure. On the inside, Brian talked about these amazing views and the wonderful shoreline. How can the building enhance your enjoyment of that view and that wonderful piece of site? Here are some large gathering areas where we start to use the heavy timber and the wood that's been a part of our region for a long time. And maybe some of those special timbers start to help shape a large meeting room or larger special space. So what you're seeing here, again, is that large open interior space, no columns to kind of get in our way when it comes to placing bookshelves. But what if we contoured the ceiling such that we brought in the north light? The north light is actually the best light to have in a library, and artists have known this for a long time. If we mitigated and controlled the sometimes harsh light that comes from the west, but found a way to bring in light from the north, maybe that would give us a different look and feel for this particular concept. Okay, scheme B. This one represents a totally different idea. What if we actually made use of the parking lot and the entry that's currently there on the south end of the site, use that, keep the building essentially in the same place, and leave the north end near the park and the beach trailhead for future use or conservation or any of the activities we'll talk about later. This is also a one-story scheme, but instead of having one large pavilion-like space, this scheme starts to show what would happen if we broke up the building into sections that held certain pieces of the building activities. So perhaps the meeting room is its own little chunk of the building that kind of sets it apart. Maybe there's an entry area that's also set apart, leaving this central area for the collection, for staff, for children. And what that starts to do is create these interesting little areas in between that could be little courtyards. You could sit in there out of the wind and read, or maybe there's a nice garden area to look out into. So this is still a one-story scheme and it's located in the same spot on the site, but you can see it starts to bring other opportunities to the forefront. And I think we'll talk a little bit, and Brian mentioned earlier, there's a serious level change between this intersection here, which is by the chopping block, and this level down here, it's actually 8 meters. And these two schemes, by placing the building in the middle, essentially you're walking or driving down to where the building would be. So from the street, you're almost looking down on the roof of the building, so keep that in mind. But the building sits on kind of the larger flat portion of the site. So some of these pictures start to show what it would be like to have these spaces in between. Oops. Outdoor spaces under cover or out in the sun. What it would look like to have, you know, taller ceiling spaces that look out toward a view. So here you can see what a one-story space that's broken up into several different portions might look like. And one that, you know, it lets the trail system do what it's doing. It doesn't engage it as specifically as the first scheme. It lets it be there on the site, but doesn't quite touch it as much. And what you're seeing here is a view from the south, maybe looking toward this entry courtyard that would be right next to that south parking lot area. Here you can see some images of spaces, library spaces that look out onto courtyard areas. And some of those outdoor spaces start to almost expand the library's footprint. You know, you can program and have activities out there, and it almost makes the library bigger in square footage on those nice days that you can be outside. Here's an image of what it looks like if you start to expose the truss that holds up the roof. So there's things we can do there. So here's a view of a one-story space looking out under a large overhang back toward the trail and the waterfront. Okay, so last, concept C. There won't be a quiz at the end, I promise. Hang with us. So concept C, okay, this is another idea. Another idea would be to place the building right here at the very southeast corner, and by placing the building here and doing something radical, initiating a 2-story library over parking, what that does is it makes a much smaller footprint on the site. So we kind of gather all of the building and parking needs toward the southeast corner, and that renders a much larger portion of the site open. Now, there's a trade-off. All of a sudden now, the library is on a couple stories, and that changes your experience of the library. Not good or bad, but just different. So what you're seeing here is, here's the chopping block, that's that building right there. And imagine if you entered at about the same point on the slope as that door to the chopping block right now. It's kind of part way down on Abbotsford there. But then vehicles would enter here and proceed under the building, and all the parking would be under the building. And then library would be 2 stories, and what that does is from that corner of Abbotsford and Marine, you actually see building. The other schemes, you're kind of looking down out over the building. This scheme, from a pedestrian standpoint, you can see the front door and enter it from the street or from the sidewalk. So it just has a different relationship with the neighborhood. This scheme, because it's more than 1 story, brings totally different opportunities than we've seen with the other ones. So instead of a big open pavilion or specific little courtyards, what this scheme affords us are some overlooks from higher up on the site. Maybe you're 2 stories up and you're looking out over the shoreline or over the BC bike event or the farmer's market. What if we sculpted an outdoor stair or a ramp area that allowed you a different way to approach the building? These are a couple of, this is a building we did for the Kitsap County offices, and they had a very tough slope also, so we kind of nestled the building into the hill and made that outdoor slope area an asset for their landscaping. So this is, again, just another rough image of what it might look like if there was a public plaza at that corner of Abbotsford and Marine, and you entered essentially right off that. So the door is visible and present at the street. That's what you're seeing there. And this 2-story scheme starts to enable us to create different types of spaces inside. So while the pavilion scheme, its advantage was that all the space was the same and very flexible, this scheme starts to give us the opportunity to have different scale spaces. So double height spaces and single height spaces. And here you can see a building that another library we did where we knew we had to have a stair. And so we made the stair a large event. And this event was in the center of the building. And because we put large signage on the underside of the landings, everyone could find their way. It was easy as pie to get through the building. Here's some ideas of what it would be like to look out over the site, or maybe inside the building looking out over activities that are happening below you. And this is just a really conceptual rendering of what it might be like to enter and have those different scale spaces to choose from. Sometimes you'd like to be in a tall two-story space. You can see that right here. My pointer isn't very bright. But then also having kind of a more intimate space tucked off to the side, or a space up high that you can look out over. So this gives a little bit more variety. So all different ideas here. Okay, so this is where the quiz happens. In summary, before we take a break, we want to just quickly recap the attributes of these three schemes, and I know you will help us come up with a longer list tonight, so the last couple minutes here. All right, so scheme A. This was this large, flexible open space all on one floor. There's a connection to the trail system. We make use of the parking up here at the north, and we reserve this southeast corner for whatever, whatever you see fit. This scheme might allow us to bring in different types of light from the north, and then also using the building structure to start to make an experience over the trail or to bring in that light from above. Scheme B, still on one floor, but starting to break apart pieces of the program so that we create some of those little outdoor spaces that could be interesting. On this scheme, the north end is left for conservation or future use, and we're making use of that south entry and south parking lot. These more intimate outdoor rooms could be programmable for activities or just chairs and umbrella tables. But again, that starts to just set up some different opportunities than the first scheme. Lastly, scheme C. This is the one where we're right on the corner. There's some kind of an entry right off the sidewalk that's visible and accessible. And this is the one scheme that starts to capitalize on having an 8-meter change in height. Parking below the library allows us to have a really concise footprint, but there's obviously cost trade-offs with that. But this one preserves a lot of the site for future use or conservation. And it has the variety of interior scale spaces. So I think I'm going to hand off to Jeff, and he's going to explain the next step and go to questions.
Let there be light. Am I on? You hear me? You hear me? Okay. All right, so you've seen some ideas, very conceptual and very broad, based on what you had handed this team earlier on. So I ask you now, is there any question you have about that requires clarification so that you understand it correctly? Yes?
Yes, the Plan C shows the steps up the side from the parking below. Cannot the main entrance be on the highway level with a little setback for buses to come in, drop off seniors right on the main level?
So that's this one, the two-story one?
Yes.
Okay, so you're asking, is there not a chance for an access off the upper sidewalk?
We're feeling that an elevator from the parking area right up to the main floor entrance.
Absolutely. I think with any multi-story scheme and elevator, ramps, we need to make sure this building is accessible no matter how you arrive at the site and how, the different ways you can experience it. So I think, we just made a decision for the purposes of tonight to show bus stop and handy dart stop here. But I think if we hear tonight that an entrance off of marine is something you want us to take a look at, we can. I think, you know, we would get input on your traffic patterns, and I know there was just a traffic study done in October, and we would look at that to see where the safest spot for pull-off is. You know, we want to make sure we're not putting in a curb cut where there might be people turning and pulling off in an area where the traffic is too fast or heavy. So we would try to get input on that as well as what you give us tonight.
Okay. Yes.
It would mean if you have books on both levels, you would have desks operating at one time.
I'll repeat the question. Yeah.
And
So,
the other thing is we would, okay. Two things concern me about a two-story building, and this is my knowledge of libraries. If you have books on two levels, you must have two librarians on two levels, because you can't leave a level not supervised. And the second thing then is you would also have the cost of a elevator. Okay, and I don't know what you were planning, how you were planning to include. Was it if all the books are on one level in that two-story? That solves the problem.
I think you're either an architect or a librarian, or both.
I've been on the library board for a long time. I was on the library board here for a long time.
Yeah.
I was doing the building plans way back over 20 years ago.
Right. You've made some very astute observations that setting up a two-story scheme does have staffing implications for the library. If we need to keep it safe and monitorable and have staff present to help people, we would need to make sure that we're okay having staff on multiple floors. And I think that's something we aren't even at a place to know yet how things lay out in this building, but that's a good observation. And I think an elevator and stairs are just a natural part of a multi-story scheme, so also very good observation.
any other questions for clarification? Yes.
If the parking's underneath, does that mean in fact that it's really a three-story structure with parking, then library on the two above them?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
The answer to that was yes. A question at the back, please. She'll run the mic back to you, sir.
How is transit going to service that when the buses, they all meet at the mall now? They stop at the mall. The person that takes a bus from Wildwood, Cranberry, have to transfer a bus down to the library, or would the buses go down to the library, drop them off, and go back up? How would it all be serviced?
Okay. Do we have anyone here who can speak to that from the city?
I think we know that public transit is an important piece of getting people to and from the library, and we haven't initiated any discussions with the transit yet, but we'll work with Charlie and council, I guess, to record that comment and make sure it's appropriate.
Okay. Any other questions for clarification before we break? Yes, sir.
When did we see sites 2, 3, and 4 set up? I understand that there's a $70,000 grant for this deal, and we're only looking at one thing.
Can you ask the question again, sir?
When do we see anything on sites 2, 3, and 4?
When do we see anything on sites 2, 3,
One
and
site
4?
here. There's more than that proposed for this proposed building.
Council selected one site.
Yeah, I believe the council had made a selection of one site, and that was the site that the team was directed to work with. So that's a decision that council had made. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just wondering about cost. Is there, between these three schemes, is there a big price difference? Can we know anything about that at this time?
Because this design is just conceptual, we don't have any actual costs yet. But it's quite apparent from the design of the buildings, etc. You can see that Scheme C probably is a little bit more expensive than Scheme A, and Scheme C is probably in the middle. So that's really the range that you're looking at. You're seeing whether you're prepared, if you spend a little bit more to get a building that's more compact, underground parking, and a lot more of the site left open. Or you want to spend a little less and have the building pretty well take up the rest of the site and keep the old parking lot. That's kind of the only thing I can give you on price right now. That's the least expensive. This one costs a little bit more. But we will be examining the actual costs as the design moves along. But good question, thank you.
Information you'll be able to bring back
Yes.
at a later time. Okay?
Definitely.
Yes.
Do you have any square footage measurements?
Square footage measurements on the three options?
Yes, we do. All three schemes were based around 18,000 square feet, or about 1,600 meters squared. So they all represent the same size. And when Brian showed the site diagrams earlier, when we showed that half the site needs to be rendered for conservation no matter what, it's only between that size building, that 18,000 square feet or 1,600 meters squared. That and parking only represents between 10 and 20% of the site, depending on which scheme we use. So all of them were designed around that same criteria.
Okay.
To put it in context, the site is about the size.
The site is about the size of a City of Vancouver block. To put it into context, it's about 670 feet long. It ranges between 200 and 300 feet wide. Just put that back.
Any other questions for clarification before we move on? Yes.
This site is going to be used for far more than, because the site is going to be used for far more than just a library. My concern about option C, where parking is underground, is accessibility for things like the BC bike race, where we have a lot of vehicles, big vehicles coming in, unloading bicycles, people, equipment. It wouldn't be able to fit underground, obviously, so there would have to be some way of allowing traffic like that to still get on the site.
Right, and I bet there's...
I think that's a great comment, and I think all of those events that we know take place in Powell River, whether it's the farmers market or the fair or the BC bike, we need those ideas tonight about how we can best accommodate all those things on the site. And maybe it means that in this scheme, that north parking lot stays just how it is, so that all the 18-wheelers that bring in the showers and the bathrooms, they are still accommodated here. And I think all of those ideas we need tonight. So thank you.
Any other questions before we break? Going once, going twice, one there, please.
How did we jump from just having a library to all these other things? We're not city people. We like it the way it is. And we don't need all the other things being added in a later date.
What other things what other things are you seeing?
Talking about the other things that could be added on.
The other things that could be added on to the building, or
Just the other things like the set up for the farmers market or whatever. We already have that at Powell River, and other things that we're showing as cities.
so it's all
We're all set up.
So all of those opportunities they mentioned, you say already exist, so you don't need them. Is that your point?
That's great feedback. I mean, we brought a lot of ideas tonight. We know that not all of them will be a good fit, but we thought it was better to bring a lot of ideas and have you tell us which ones fit or don't fit. So we appreciate that comment.
Anything else before we break?
The site that was big that there's a government on that site. When are we going to have this discussion? You guys are putting the cart before the horse. The town is dying. We're another Ocean Falls. You're spending money that we don't have. How are we going to When I go to buy a house, I go to the bank, I get my mortgage, I know how much money I got We're a dying town. You're spending money that we don't have. You just wasted $70,000. You've done a good job, but it's not your fault. Have a referendum. The people will decide if they want a library, where they want it, then you do this.
That's a very good question, but it's not a question that anyone here can answer.
I know, but what you're doing is you're like a used car salesman. You're doing all this stuff, trying to diffuse it here. It is excellent. You guys got to pay attention to it here. We're in some jeopardy. There's 400 jobs down there that are in jeopardy. There's another 1,500 to 2,000 ventures that could lose half of their ventures. We don't have the money. Get a budget and then we'll speak on it.
Have you got a question to ask the architects? Or just a statement? Are you done? Okay, thank you. Yes, back here.
I suppose it's not really a question for the architect, it's more an answer to you, because I hear your emotion, right? But I've been in this town for a long time, and I don't think we could ever agree on a site for anything. We couldn't agree where we were going to put the waste transfer site. We could, that's not a healthy way for a community to choose. That's why we have the politicians. And you might not like the decision they made, but I think we should wait till we have something that we think we might like and then vote on the cost. And it might not be exactly like building a house. It's like building part of our future in the community. And
we've got another question at the back.
I would like to thank the layouts here that you guys have selected. I'm assuming that the council only selected one site to do some planning on, so that these other sites haven't actually been really looked at too much.
That's correct.
I would like to say that I think in a community it's important to reclaim land too, so that's something I'd just like to express to people, that maybe we can bring nature back to the center of town. Although I do really like what they've done here, and I think for everybody, this is sort of an idea to get creative things flowing and to present concepts. And libraries are very important for community. It'll bring back dollars in the next generation, because the children, they learn more, they get better jobs.
Okay. There's one question behind you, and that'll be the last one, because we'll have to move on.
On the wall, they had a library that looked like in 1940. How many libraries did Powell River have in 1940? How many did it have in 1960? When we become a municipality, you took everything to Westview. We don't have a library in Wildwood. We can't walk downtown to get to a library. I think we should have a library in Wildwood, and in Cranberry we used to have a library, and in the town site, the old White Hall. And it would cost us nothing.
Okay? Thank you. Okay. Okay, we're going to go to a break now, and there's refreshments out the side here. We have an enormous group, so we're going to ask you to perhaps share Valentine's Day and all, but please, we'll have a break. We'd like you back here in 15 minutes, and we will meet at that end of the hall to explain what's going to happen next. Thank you very much.